My neighbor poisoned my garden for 12 years to lower my property value. I destroyed his real estate empire. My neighbor secretly poisoned my garden for 12 years, killing every plant I tried to grow, making my property look abandoned so he could buy it cheap. He thought I was just a confused old woman who couldn't maintain her yard. He forgot I was a retired environmental chemist who specialized in soil contamination and toxicology for 40 years. I'm Elizabeth Morgan, 77 years old. This is the story of how my neighbor waged a 12-year war against my property and how I systematically destroyed his entire real estate empire in revenge. I bought my house in Carmel, California, in 1985. A beautiful Spanish-style home with a large yard, perfect for the garden I'd always dreamed of creating. My husband Richard and I spent years building that garden. Roses, hydrangeas, vegetable beds, fruit trees, a small greenhouse. It was our paradise. Richard died in 2008 from cancer. After he passed, the garden became my connection to him. Every flower I planted, every vegetable I harvested, reminded me of the life we'd built together. In 2011, my neighbor's situation changed. The house next door had been owned by the Henderson family for decades. Lovely people. Their property bordered mine. We shared a fence line. When old Mr. Henderson died, his son Trevor inherited the property. Trevor was 42, a real estate developer, an investor who owned multiple properties in Carmel and Monterey. Trevor moved into the Henderson house in March 2011. Within weeks, I knew we'd have problems. Trevor wasn't interested in being a neighbor. He was interested in property values and investment opportunities. At first, he was friendly, too friendly. Elizabeth, your property is beautiful. Have you ever thought about selling? I'd give you a fair price. Thank you, Trevor, but I'm not interested in selling. This is my home. Of course. But if you ever change your mind, I'm always interested in acquiring property in this neighborhood. I thought that was the end of it. But Trevor asked again 2 months later, and again 3 months after that. Each time, I politely declined. Then strange things started happening to my garden. In June 2011, my rose bushes started dying, all of them. Within 2 weeks, every rose bush in my front yard was dead. Brown, withered, gone. I was devastated. Those roses had been Richard's favorite. We'd planted them together 15 years earlier. I consulted a local nursery. I don't understand. These roses were healthy. What could kill them all so quickly? The nursery expert was puzzled. This looks like herbicide damage. Did you spray anything near them? No. I'm very careful with my garden. I don't use harsh chemicals. Well, something killed them. And it wasn't disease or pests. This is chemical damage. I replanted new roses. Within a month, they were dead too. Then my vegetable garden died. Tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, everything withered and died within weeks of planting. Then my hydrangeas. Then my fruit trees started showing signs of distress. Over 18 months, every plant in my yard died. No matter what I planted, it would grow for a few weeks, then suddenly wither and die. My beautiful garden became a wasteland. Dead plants, brown soil, nothing would grow. My property started looking neglected, abandoned, like the owner couldn't maintain it. Trevor came by in December 2012 with another offer. Elizabeth, I've noticed your garden is struggling. Property maintenance can be overwhelming at your age. I'd like to make you an offer on your house. You could move somewhere smaller, easier to manage. I'll give you $750,000. My property was worth at least $950,000. He was offering $200,000 below market value. Trevor, I'm not selling, and I'm not too old to maintain my property. Your yard suggests otherwise. Look, I'm trying to help you. Before your property value drops even more. Something clicked in my mind. Before your property value drops even more. Trevor wanted my property to look bad. He wanted it to look like I couldn't maintain it, and he'd been the only one consistently pushing me to sell. I started paying attention. My property bordered Trevor's on the south side. Our fence line ran for about 100 feet. I noticed that the plants closest to Trevor's property died first. The damage spread from the fence line inward. I also noticed Trevor was in his yard frequently, usually early morning or evening, near the fence. One morning in January 2013, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and looked out my bedroom window. Trevor was standing at the fence line in the pre-dawn darkness. He was spraying something something along the base of the fence. He was spraying on my side of the fence, into my yard. I grabbed my phone and took photos from my window. The lighting wasn't great, but I captured Trevor clearly spraying something into my property. That son of a bitch was poisoning my garden. I didn't confront him. I'd spent 40 years as an environmental chemist working for the EPA and private consulting firms. I specialized in soil contamination, toxicology, and environmental damage assessment. I knew exactly how to prove what he was doing. First, I collected soil samples from multiple locations in my yard. I focused on areas near the fence line and areas where plants had recently died. I sent the samples to an independent laboratory for comprehensive analysis. The results came back 2 weeks later. High concentrations of glyphosate, Roundup herbicide, triclopyr, woody plant killer, 2,4-D, broadleaf herbicide, atrazine, pre-emergent herbicide, chlorsulfuron, persistent soil sterilant. My soil was saturated with herbicides, multiple types, at concentrations far exceeding normal application rates. Someone had been systematically poisoning my soil with a cocktail of plant killers designed to prevent anything from growing. The soil closest to Trevor's fence line had the highest concentrations. The levels decreased with distance from the fence. The pattern was unmistakable. The poison was being applied from Trevor's property into mine, but I needed more evidence. I needed to catch him in the act with documentation that would hold up in court. I installed hidden cameras, small motion-activated wildlife cameras positioned in trees and bushes with views of the fence line. I didn't tell anyone. I just watched and waited. For 3 weeks, the cameras caught nothing suspicious. Then on February 18th, 2013, at 6:15 a.m., the cameras caught Trevor. He came out in the pre-dawn darkness, carrying a backpack sprayer. He walked along the fence line, spraying herbicide through the fence into my yard. The video was crystal clear. Trevor's face, the sprayer, the deliberate application of chemicals into my property. He did it again 4 days later, and again a week after that. Over 2 months, my cameras documented 8 separate incidents of Trevor poisoning my property. I had him, but I didn't act immediately. I wanted to understand the full scope of what he was doing and why. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Webb to research Trevor's business dealings. What Marcus found was stunning. Trevor wasn't just a real estate developer. He was running a systematic property acquisition scheme in expensive California coastal neighborhoods. His pattern: buy a property in a high-value neighborhood, identify adjacent properties owned by elderly residents, systematically degrade those properties through sabotage, make lowball offers claiming the properties are declining or too much for elderly owners to maintain, acquire properties below market value, restore them quickly, resell for massive profits. Trevor had done this at least 9 times in Carmel and Monterey over the past 8 years. Marcus found property records showing Trevor had purchased 5 properties adjacent to ones he already owned, all from elderly sellers, all at below market prices, all within months of the neighboring properties, showing signs of neglect. Trevor was targeting elderly homeowners, sabotaging their properties to make them look unmaintainable, then exploiting their age and frustration to acquire valuable real estate cheaply. I was furious, but I was also methodical. I documented everything: soil test results showing herbicide contamination, video footage of Trevor poisoning my property, 8 incidents, timeline of plant deaths correlated with Trevor's spraying property records, showing his pattern of acquiring adjacent properties, interviews with other elderly homeowners who'd sold to Trevor. Then I contacted an attorney, Patricia Valdez, who specialized in property damage and elder abuse. Patricia, I need to sue my neighbor, but I also want to destroy him completely. He's been running a criminal enterprise targeting elderly homeowners. Patricia reviewed my evidence. Her eyes widened. Elizabeth, this is extraordinary. You have video evidence of intentional property damage, soil contamination, and a clear pattern of predatory behavior. This isn't just a civil case. This is criminal. Good. I want him prosecuted criminally and sued civilly. I want his real estate licenses revoked. I want every property he acquired through this scheme investigated. I want him destroyed. Patricia smiled. Then let's get started. We filed multiple actions simultaneously in March 2013. Criminal complaint with the Monterey County District Attorney, trespassing, vandalism, environmental contamination, elder abuse, conspiracy to defraud, civil lawsuit against Trevor, property damage, intentional infliction of emotional distress, trespass, nuisance, fraud, complaint with the California Department of Real Estate, unethical business practices, fraud, elder abuse in real estate transactions, complaint with the EPA, illegal pesticide application, environmental contamination. The criminal investigation moved quickly. The video evidence was irrefutable. Trevor was arrested in April 2013. The bail hearing was satisfying. Your Honor, Mr. Morgan is charged with multiple felonies, including elder abuse and environmental crimes. The evidence includes video documentation of the defendant deliberately poisoning the victim's property over a 2-month period. Trevor's attorney argued, Your Honor, this is a neighbor dispute that's been blown out of proportion. My client admits he may have used herbicide near the property line, but any drift onto the neighboring property was accidental. The prosecutor played the video footage in court. Clear images of Trevor deliberately spraying through the fence into my yard. 8 separate incidents. Always in darkness, always secretive. The judge set bail at $500,000. Mr. Morgan, this appears to be systematic, intentional property destruction. You're a flight risk given your financial resources. High bail is appropriate. Trevor made bail, but his world was crumbling. The California Department of Real Estate suspended his real estate licenses pending investigation. The district attorney's investigation expanded. They contacted the 9 elderly homeowners who'd sold properties to Trevor at below market prices. 6 of them reported similar experiences. Properties they'd maintained for years suddenly had mysterious problems. Plants died inexplicably, lawns withered despite watering. Trevor appeared frequently with lowball offers. They felt pressured to sell because they couldn't maintain their homes anymore. One woman, Margaret Chen, was in tears when investigators interviewed her. I loved my home. I lived there for 42 years. Then suddenly my garden died. My lawn turned brown. Nothing would grow no matter what I did. I felt like I was failing, like I was too old to care for my property. Trevor convinced me I should sell, move somewhere easier. I sold for $680,000. He resold it 18 months later for $1.2 million. I was devastated when I found out. The pattern was undeniable. Trevor had been systematically sabotaging elderly neighbors' properties to acquire them cheaply. The district attorney filed additional charges, multiple counts of elder abuse, 1 for each victim, fraud, 9 counts, conspiracy, environmental crimes, illegal pesticide application, racketeering, running a criminal enterprise. Trevor's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. Mr. Morgan will plead guilty to misdemeanor vandalism and pay restitution. The DA refused. Your client ran a multi-year criminal enterprise targeting elderly victims. We're proceeding to trial on all felony charges. The trial began in September 2013. I testified as the primary victim and as an expert witness. Miss Morgan, you're a retired environmental chemist. Can you explain what you found in your soil samples? I found a mixture of 5 different herbicides at concentrations indicating deliberate, repeated application. The concentration gradient, highest near Mr. Morgan's fence, decreasing with distance, proves the source was from his property. This wasn't accidental drift. This was systematic poisoning, designed to sterilize my soil and prevent plant growth. Why would someone do that? To make my property look neglected and unmaintainable, reducing its value and making me more likely to sell at a below market price. It's a con designed to exploit elderly homeowners. The prosecutor played the video footage. 8 incidents of Trevor deliberately spraying poison into my yard. Trevor's defense was pathetic. He claimed he was spraying weeds on his side of the fence and didn't realize the herbicide was going through the fence. The prosecutor destroyed that claim. Mr. Morgan, you're seen spraying at 6:15 a.m. in darkness. Why spray weeds in the dark? I have a busy schedule. You're spraying through the fence, not along your side of it. Why? I may have been careless. You did this 8 times over 2 months. Always in darkness. Always secretively. That's not carelessness. That's deliberate. The jury saw through Trevor's lies. Other victims testified. Margaret Chen described how her garden died, how Trevor pressured her to sell, how devastated she was. Property records showed Trevor's pattern of acquiring adjacent properties from elderly owners at below-market prices, then reselling at massive profits. Environmental experts testified that the herbicide concentrations in my soil were consistent with repeated intentional applications, not accidental drift. The evidence was overwhelming. After 3 weeks of trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Trevor's face went white. His wife was crying. His attorney looked defeated. Sentencing was 2 months later, in December 2013. The judge was harsh. Mr. Morgan, you ran a calculated, cruel scheme targeting elderly homeowners. You sabotaged their properties, exploited their age and confusion, and stole their homes through fraud. You showed no remorse and attempted to blame your victims for poor maintenance. Your crimes were systematic, premeditated, and designed to prey on vulnerable people. I'm sentencing you to 11 years in state prison. Trevor collapsed in his chair. Additional sentences: $750,000 in restitution to victims. All real estate licenses permanently revoked. Permanent ban from real estate industry. 5 years probation after release. Mandatory restitution to all victims who sold properties below market value. But the criminal case was only the beginning. My civil lawsuit sought damages for cost to remediate contaminated soil, $45,000, replacement value of destroyed plants, $28,000, loss of property value, $150,000, emotional distress, $500,000, punitive damages, $2 million. Trevor's assets were substantial. He owned 7 properties, had significant investments, drove a $120,000 car. In February 2014, the civil court awarded me $2.3 million in total damages. Trevor's assets were seized to pay the judgment. His properties were sold, his investments liquidated, his car repossessed. His wife divorced him while he was in prison. She got whatever assets remained after my judgment. But I wasn't done. I worked with Patricia Valdez to help the other elderly victims sue Trevor as well. Margaret Chen sued and won $890,000. The difference between what she sold her house for and its true value, plus damages. 4 other victims won similar judgments. Total civil judgments against Trevor, $6.7 million. He'd stolen from elderly people for years, making millions in real estate profits. Now he'd lost everything. The EPA also fined Trevor $175,000 for illegal pesticide application and environmental contamination. The California Department of Real Estate permanently revoked all his licenses and banned him from any real estate-related business. Trevor's real estate empire, built on fraud and elder abuse, was completely destroyed. Meanwhile, I had work to do on my property. The soil contamination was severe. Some herbicides, particularly chlorsulfuron, can persist in soil for years. I hired an environmental remediation company. They removed the top 18 inches of contaminated soil along the entire fence line and replaced it with clean soil. Cost $45,000. Paid from Trevor's judgment. I replanted my garden in spring 2014. Roses, hydrangeas, vegetables, fruit trees, everything Richard and I had built together. This time, everything grew. Beautiful, healthy, thriving. My property was restored. Trevor is currently 8 years into his 11-year sentence. He's housed at Soledad State Prison, about 40 miles from Carmel. He'll be released in 2024 at age 55. No real estate career, no properties, no wealth, no reputation, just a convicted felon who preyed on elderly people. I'm 77 now. My garden is beautiful again. Roses bloom in. Vegetables thrive in. The greenhouse is full of seedlings. Every day, I work in my garden, I think about Richard, and I think about how I protected what we built together. Trevor thought he could exploit an elderly widow. He thought I'd be confused, overwhelmed, easy to manipulate into selling. He forgot that some elderly widows spent 40 years as environmental chemists, specializing in soil contamination and toxicology. I knew exactly what he was doing. I knew how to prove it, and I knew how to destroy him for it. Some people say I was too harsh, that 11 years in prison is excessive for poisoning a garden, but Trevor didn't just poison my garden. He ran a criminal enterprise. He targeted 9 elderly homeowners. He stole their homes through fraud and elder abuse. He made millions exploiting vulnerable people. My garden was just one crime in a long pattern of predatory behavior. I didn't just want revenge for myself. I wanted justice for everyone he'd victimized. Trevor is 8 years into his sentence. He'll serve 3 more years. I'll be 80 when he's released. My garden will still be here, beautiful and thriving. And Trevor will have nothing. That's not revenge. That's consequences. I'm Elizabeth Morgan. I'm 77 years old. My neighbor poisoned my garden for 12 years to force me to sell my home cheap. He thought I was a confused old woman who couldn't figure out what he was doing. He forgot I was an environmental chemist with 40 years of experience in soil toxicology. I documented his crimes, caught him on video, exposed his entire criminal enterprise, put him in prison for 11 years, took $2.3 million from him, got his real estate licenses permanently revoked, helped other victims sue him for millions more. His real estate empire is destroyed. His freedom is gone. His future is ruined. And I'm still living in my beautiful home with my beautiful garden, exactly where I belong. Trevor wanted my property. I gave him a decade in prison instead. That's what happens when you target an environmental chemist who knows exactly how to document contamination, prove causation, and build an airtight case. My garden is blooming. Trevor is in a cell. Justice served. The end. Subscribe for property. Revenge justice.